Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the Department of Defense Cybercrime Center's 25th anniversary celebration. I'm Master Sergeant Brandon George, and I'll be your MC for today's ceremony. We are honored to have you here with us today as we commemorate a quarter century of DC3 operations. Will all guests please rise for the presentation of colors and the singing of our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, CWTC Gate and Napier, for that beautiful rendition of our national anthem. And thank you, Joint Base Andrews Honor Guard. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. I will now welcome DC3 Executive Director, Mr. Jude Sunderbruch.
Well, good afternoon and welcome, and thank you very much for that incredible rendition of our national anthem, as well as the support from the Color Guard. We deeply appreciate it. So, we have a number of distinguished guests with us here today to share in this important occasion. It is my distinct privilege to welcome senior officials from across the United States government, the Department of Defense, and many international partners. We also welcome former DC3 alumni, our current DC3 team, members of the media, and many other distinguished guests. Please join me in a special welcome to DC3's former executive directors in attendance, Mr. Steve Shirley and Mr. Jeff Specht. The origins of DC3 date to 1998, with the establishment of a joint computer forensics laboratory and a similar joint cyber training program. Since that time, DC3 has grown into a nearly 500-person strong team. DC3 is a federal cyber center, a center of excellence for digital and multimedia forensics, and a focal point for vulnerability disclosure, cybersecurity support to the defense industrial base, research and development, special capabilities, and analytical efforts. As will become clear during the course of the ceremony today, DC3 serves and partners with a broad array of stakeholders. We are privileged to have two guest speakers from the Pentagon today. First, we will hear from Mr. John Dickson, Director of Defense Intelligence, Counterintelligence, Law Enforcement and Security from the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. I've had the pleasure of working with Mr. Dickson for many years during his distinguished career of service. He has guided numerous efforts and initiatives in support of the department's law enforcement, investigative, and national security agencies during his career, and it is a privilege to welcome him today. We also welcome Mr. Gurpreet Bhatia, Principal Director Cybersecurity from the Office of the Chief Information Officer, who will be our second speaker. Mr. Bhatia guides numerous initiatives to protect the cybersecurity of the Department of Defense's networks and systems, as well as those of our partners, both in government and industry. I've had the opportunity to get to know him across the course of the past year, and we appreciate our close partnership with him and his colleagues. We will begin with Mr. Dickson. Sir, the podium is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. What a great occasion. Happy 25th anniversary to DC3, to all of you who have served or currently serves here, certainly to the distinguished former leaders of DC3. So the interesting thing about these auspicious events in an organization's timeline, particularly an important 25-year milestone, and the Department of Defense probably, I'll say, as a proud DoD guy, probably more than most organizations, these are nice, but you just want to get your hands in the mission, right? And so it's our tendency to not take the time. And so this is great, Jude, the way you've organized this, the assembly here, for all of us, particularly the workforce, to be able to take a knee, reflect on what has been DC3, what it is today, and where it's going. What a great path you're on. So do take that time and reflect and be proud and share in your pride. These events are so important for that very reason. I'll try to do justice by your history and just make a few comments before I move on and turn it over to your next speaker. You know, in our business, there's probably few things, including this echo, there's probably few things that we can say with 100% certainty. The one thing I can say is DC3 is essential to the protection of this department and the nation. You don't have to be in the community very long to understand that. Growing up in the Army and as I matured my career through DIA and now into the Pentagon, that's certainly known to all of us, certainly known to all of you inside this great institution. But perhaps more than ever, DC3 is essential to the protection of the department and the nation. Our adversaries, big news flash, are relentless, always innovating, always finding new attack vectors, always trying to seek the advantage, always trying to circumvent what you do every day to protect the department. So it's not unknown to all of you exactly how highly advanced their cyber intelligence and other non-kinetic capabilities are to attack this department and weaken the nation's protective posture. So for that very reason, we need DC3. Now, I almost went into a little Jack Nicholson mode about needing you on that wall, but I think you get the point. We definitely need you, and we're so grateful for the work that you've done over the 25 years and all the work that the current cadre is doing to bring it forward. So I just want to kind of pause there with that little bit that I've said about what DC3 is to the importance of the protective posture of the nation, and just say, wow, who the heck would not want to be part of this, right? So for all of you that do that, you know, at work here today, you take the pride. This is really an impressive mission set. I wish I could go back 30 years and figure out how to get here 5 years later. So what an impressive outfit. So every year our adversaries target our technical sectors, including the defense industrial base, stealing billions of dollars of intellectual property and critical program information. Again, that's why we need you. That's why we're grateful for the work that you do. The nation certainly has a variety of capabilities across the military departments, across the intelligence community, across law enforcement to meet and thwart those threats, for sure. Always chasing, always trying to advance, always trying to seek to take the advantage of our adversaries. But one thing's for sure, DC3 provides a unique capability, certainly very notable here on their silver anniversary, this high-performing Federal Cyber Center. So as you've heard from Jude, as many of us heard in the briefings earlier today, DC3 provides the critical counterintelligence and law enforcement capabilities that protect the department and its equities, enabling investigations and operations that thwart those threats, and provide strategic insights to senior leaders that have to make decisions every day of how to prioritize, protect, and ensure the effective operations of the department. The DC3 does this, as many of you know, some of you are becoming more knowledgeable about this, by responding to cyber incidents and the reporting that they receive, leveraging vast access to the department. I'm so impressed with the amount of integration and partnerships that DC3 has, and the priority Jude has placed on that. Being able to respond to those incidents and leveraging those critical sources to collect, fuse, analyze, and disseminate that critical knowledge to have the effect that I've mentioned already. As important as the threat-facing activities of this organization is, DC3, it's clear to me, probably clear to everybody here by now, it's a learning organization, and they pay a premium to ensure always learning, always innovating, ever evolving through their training programs, creating innovative tools and capabilities, and not just for themselves, but for the broader enterprise that they're part of. A highly technical knowledge and action kind of organization. It's kind of a counterintelligence phrase that we use a lot. Certainly true for DC3. They're all about knowledge and action, and it's very impressive. This organization benefits from the alliances and partners that they have, both in the U.S. government, certainly in the department, across the U.S. government, across the commercial sector, and certainly with our international partners. That makes DC3 better, makes the community better, and it actually helps our partners better and work together to protect ourselves from those threats. DC3 certainly elevates cyber threat awareness across the department and the government. They have a number of case vignettes that they could cite, most of which probably be in a closed setting, that just speak volumes to their impressive capability. Among them, certainly not least among them, would be identifying nation-state malware in the Indo-PACOM AOR and providing warning to over 1,000 companies in the U.S. Cyber Command about that threat. Knowledge is power. As soon as you get that information, you're able to harden against that. And it has driven National Security Council strategies to deal with these in the future. So kind of wrapping this up, I'll say 25 years of successful service to the nation is just the beginning. DC3 leaders know that the most valuable resource are the people in the crowd right now, the workforce, and the need for the diversity, the inclusion, and the integration of that workforce, both in the House here in DC3 and certainly across the community. So I just want to say again, congratulations on 25 years. It's very important milestone. Celebrate it. The senior leaders of the department, certainly all of us here in the room, we appreciate you and we value your work. Thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
We thank you for your remarks, Mr. Dickson. Please join me in now welcoming Mr. Gurpreet Bhatia.
Good morning. How's everyone doing? It's truly a pleasure to be here today to celebrate this incredible milestone, 25 years, right? So when we talk about 25 years in terms of a marriage, it's a long time. So that just to put that in perspective. So I think it's great that we get together to really mark this milestone and celebrate this in a big way to showcase that we really do care. It's an important mission, and it's an important part of the DoD as a whole. So, so we really want to congratulate DC3. The leadership is amazing. The workforce is energized, and really want to focus on getting outcomes and results. So, congratulations to everyone on the DC3 team. As you know, President Biden has stated that we're living in a decisive decade. One that's marked by dramatic changes in geopolitical environment, technology, economics, and our environment holistically. I would agree with that. I think it's a really important thing to think through is what does that decisive decade look like? We talk about decisive advantage, we talk about decisive victories, but really this is being decisive and precise in all we do, and making sure that we maintain our global presence. So the United States today is challenged by many malicious actors. I don't need to repeat them. And we know they're looking to steal our technology, exploit our technology, undermine our competitive advantage at the end of the day. Our knowledge and our data is the crown jewels that we are trying to protect. They target our critical infrastructure, and our definition of critical infrastructure continually evolves. It's not just the critical infrastructure that we protect from our defense industrial base, but writ large. We need to be mindful of the entire critical infrastructure. And that endangers not just the department's mission, but also the way we live and the American people. As the department evolves in its cyber capabilities, so do our adversaries. I think they're probably evolving much faster than we are. So how do we determine how to keep pace with the likes of PRC and Russia, who are breaking down their barriers and conducting their cyber activities, stealing our information, and making our lives a little harder? The PRC in particular, as you know, is engaged in a prolonged campaign to do espionage, to compromise, to steal from our key defense industrial base and our partners, our critical technologies and our competitive advantage at the end of the day. Globally, that continues to grow in volume and severity. Yet in these times, I am very confident and heartened to see all the progress we've made to date. We continue to make the right investments in our force development. We continue to prevail in an era of strategic competition where we're trying to leverage not just our people, but our technology, our processes, and evolve the entire ecosystem along with our partners and allies on that journey. To speak to the DC3 mission, I have to say, I think when I think of the DC3 mission, I actually got exposed to the DC3 mission a while back, and all I can remember was the word forensics. And that was a very myopic vision. But hearing from DC3 over the last year, including today, I think it's just incredible in the vast span of mission that DC3 carries on. And a critical component of that mission really is led by the people. And I think there are two things that really stand out, right? One is the partnership, their attitude, and then a culture of innovation. I think that is really incredibly important to make sure that we succeed in all these efforts that we're trying to undertake. So in terms of our engagement with DC3, I think we have a range of efforts that we are collaborating with them on. I just wanted to highlight just a couple of them. So we're working with across the department to identify how do we offer cybersecurity as a service. I think we look at cybersecurity as a service as a term, as a thing, but it's really a broad-scale opportunity for us to make sure that we are baselining, we are understanding this base platform that we all stand on for everything that we enable within the department. And to make sure that it's secure, it's available, and we can trust it when we need to trust it at the right moment. So it's really incredible what DC3 is working with us on securing the DIB, from sharing threat intelligence to really delivering training, to helping them do analysis. It is just an incredible range of things that takes a team effort, and DC3 is certainly leading the way on that effort. It is my truly sincere hope that we can continue to drive the adoption rate of these services offerings by the private sector. DC3 offers a ton of incredible services, and they have talent available for everybody to tap into. And I hope that not just within the department, but also our industrial base figures out how to leverage that and form a partnership. This isn't a one-time tap. This is really a truly ongoing, forever partnership that we need to create. And when we look at the DoD cybersecurity, DIB cybersecurity program of record, right, that started back in 2008, the private sector participation has steadily grown, but we need more of that participation to persist on a much more sophisticated level. So we need all of our small companies, medium-sized companies, large companies to be part and present in that conversation. So I believe this year we have recruited 74 companies to voluntarily join the program, which is really outstanding. And the participants of the program represent over 70% of DoD's top acquisition spending. That's quite mind-boggling. But the thing that we shouldn't forget is that there are many, many small and medium-sized companies that carry a lot of our critical burden. They retain, maintain, help us develop critical capabilities that feed those larger companies. So we need to make sure that we're completely inclusive of those. Within the program, I believe DC3 delivers near real-time cyber threat intelligence, like I said earlier, at no cost, right? And I think sometimes cost is a barrier. We always assume there are barriers to this. DC3 has done a fantastic job of opening up those doors and sharing in a very open, collaborative way, which I think is definitely a testament to where DC3 is headed in the future, and where the department needs to, in fact, head, is to create those open doors for sharing and collaborating, to create the necessary services, those tech exchanges, and at the end of the day, resiliency, so we can all rely on the things that we need to. DC3 also has been absolutely paramount in cultivating those strong relationships with the private sector. And I think it starts with the fact that DC3 has become such an entrenched element within the department. We are all starting to see the value and propone for that partnership outside as well. So we really appreciate that. And as the private sector matures and DC3 excels, we want to make sure that we have opportunities to engage at speed, develop technologies at speed, and protect at speed. I'm confident that in this audience, there are many that have felt the pain, have solved many cyber problems, and are contributing on a daily basis to making sure that our cyber terrain is secure. And when I say our, it's not just the Department of Defense. I think that's important that we realize that we are living in a much more entrenched, integrated cyber ecosystem and infrastructure that is shared. So at the end of the day, right, this is about shared values to making sure that we can carry out this mission. I think there's also an incredible set of lessons learned from DC3 that we want to make sure that are codified and shared with everyone, and certainly a long list of achievements over that time. So I know I speak for the entire DoD CIO team and Honorable Sherman when I say thank you for your partnership and thank you for your leadership. And we look forward to many more years of this partnership and look forward to seeing incredible strides that you continue to make every single day. Thank you. Congratulations again.
We thank you, gentlemen, for your kind words. We are honored to have you in attendance today. We will now take this opportunity to highlight several moments in the history of DC3, with context offered from some of our most tenured employees. For our distinguished alumni in attendance, please note that time will not permit us to cover every key development and structural change in DC3's rich history as we provide an overview for our guests. In 1998, the World Wide Web was in its infancy, and the role of computers and mobile devices was evolving rapidly. On February 10th, 1998, the then Deputy Secretary of Defense, Honorable John Hamre, directed the U.S. Air Force to establish a joint DoD computer forensics laboratory and training program. The Air Force Office of Special Investigations, in coordination with other investigative agencies, began developing a plan for the implementation of the lab and training program. These initial efforts eventually led to the formation and implementation of today's DC3's Cyber Training Academy and the DC3 Computer Forensics Lab. At this time, I would like to welcome Mr. Steve Uder, who has served at DC3 across its history and currently works in our laboratory. In 1998, he was one of the first team members in the training academy. He will offer some recollections of this period. Mr. Uder, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, Mr. Speck, Mr. Shirley. I noticed that Mr. Greg Redfern is here as well. He was our initial director. I'd like to say welcome to him as well. This is the story of a little team that could. In 1999, less than half of the American households had computers, and even fewer of those were actually connected to the internet. Cell phones were not ubiquitous, and pagers were still cool. We used Palm Pilots and Blackberries, and nobody had yet heard the term, "Dude, you got a Dell." If you can remember that, right? CSI didn't exist on TV, but all of that was about to change. Few people had any real computer knowledge, and even fewer knew anything about forensics. We joked that if you could spell PC correctly 2 out of 3 times, you were an expert. When the Defense Computer Investigations Training Program, or DCITP, started, about 20 of us worked in temporary spaces not far from here in Hanover, Maryland. There was a lack of forensic training in general, and so our job was to create our own. With some curriculum we acquired from the Army counterintelligence and a lot of testing and research, we produced was arguably the best training available at the time. All of that was before Google, even. This is a totally biased statement, but it's also totally accurate. Our first class taught how to identify and properly seize devices that could hold electronic data. Once we got to this building, we actually taught the first basic forensic examiner class. We had one very primitive classroom. We had folding tables, a projector, and a really large screen that was so big we actually had to take ceiling tiles out. That's what we had. By 2002, we had 5 state-of-the-art classrooms, and we'd expanded our class offerings to include courses on network and computer basics, network intrusion investigations, and advanced data acquisition. DCITP became what is now today the Cyber Training Academy. Thank you so much for coming here today. I am very proud, we are very proud to be able to share just a part of our story with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Uder. I would like to welcome Mr. David Lutzow, who continues to serve in the lab and who was one of the first members of the lab during these early days. Mr. Lutzow, the floor is yours.
Well, I can say I'm a product of the Training Academy. Started here in 2004, and I can see some of you trying to do the math, so I'll do it for you. 18 years, 9 months, and 15 days later, I am still here, part of the laboratory. So that's a testament to the integrity of the training course. So, good afternoon. As stated, my name is David Lutzow, and I work in the forensics laboratory. And the initial concept of the lab, there was only 3 sections. There's no standard practices, no standard computers. It was just a hodgepodge where examiners would just go to different rooms, they had the software, and then they tried to make things work. They started out with 14 examiners, and actually back in the software days, we had floppy diskettes, yeah, the 3.5 diskettes. And everybody remembers those little boxes, those diskettes came in. All the examiners would sit back and go, mine, 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 mine. You didn't touch anybody else's box. So that's the way it was back in the day. So during the initial stand-up, each examiner created their own set of forensics images. So if you received the evidence, then you acquired it, and then you did the analytical part of it. So again, 2002 is when they came up with the Henry Ford model of the metrics for factory line thing. But anyway, so the examiners did all the stuff. Then they decided that wasn't really effective. So they created the imaging and extraction section, which I am in now. So I started out as a product there, and now I'm the government lead for that section. So what did that do? The imaging extraction section, now they're the responsible person. They touch the evidence. So we now are the only individuals within DC3 that touch the real evidence. We take care of it. We secure it. We do all the forensic images. Then we take it to the analyst, and they do all the analytical work. We found out that Henry Ford's model for the assembly line actually worked, where each individual had their own piece that they were responsible for. And in doing that, we could do that with more expertise and more repeatability and more credibility. So that's what we started doing in 2002, and I started in 2004. Of course, when I came, I started perfecting everything. That's not really true. Okay. So again, like I said, that freed up the examiner's work for major crimes. They could concentrate solely on the analytical part of their case. So IND actually kept pace with the advancements in technology by developing robust acquisition methodologies and renowned capabilities. So basically what that means is, as technology evolved, so did we. We had to come up with new ideas, new practices on do things. Actually, when I started in 2004, the standard hard drive was 250 gigabytes. I can remember when we got our first 750 gigabyte hard drive, we didn't know what to do, because it pretty much took almost 2 days to acquire that based on the computers and the speed at which we do things. Now we get computers with RAIDs in them, and that redundant array of disk, and that's like 20 terabytes. So to show you how advanced that we've become. We've also developed a very intense data recovery program where pretty much if it's broke, we can fix it. We've come up with a lot of technologies. When I started, if the hard drive was broke, we kind of looked at it and go, nah, we can't fix this, and then we're done. Now we got to the point where we can do laser ablations, we can take chips off, we can reball the chips. If it's broke, we can fix it. So bragging a little bit, we're pretty much at the point of 99.99% recovery rate. And that's due in part to the experts that we have hired, DC3 staff that have recognized the capabilities of individuals and the retention and the family environment that we have here at DC3. So over the years, with our intrusion sections, they moved away from their focus of approach pretty much when I arrived, the intrusion section, the only real purpose for them was if you had a personal PC and we found a virus on it, we gave them the file, and they told us, figured out what it was and whether or not it was going to affect our systems or not. So pretty much it was inward facing. Now we've got to the part where everything is pretty much outward facing with a defense industrial base and all the other partner engagements, reverse engineering malware, and so we're out there in the world, and our intrusion section is one of the best in the world at what they do. So our lab counterintelligence section, we'll get to those folks, which there's a lot of things they do that I can't talk about, but what we can say is they are very expert in handling large data sets. We get in servers, we get a lot of things that they're able to handle. They reconstruct stuff. They're really good at doing the counterterrorism stuff, and they've actually handled several very, very high-profile espionage investigations. So if you hear it out in the news, DC3 has done it. So. We didn't actually do it, we analyzed it. So just want to get this straight. So we have done a lot in the last 25 years, and that's really in part to the senior leaders that we have here, the envisions, the enablement that they have given us, and the actual family environment. And like I said, I've been here 18 years, and so they haven't given me a suitcase and kicked me out yet, so I'm kind of like the college student that won't leave home kind of stuff. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. I've enjoyed my life here, and Mr. Shirley, I can guarantee you that Kodachrome and that, but it's in the rearview mirror. He's always talking about if you don't go with advancement, you're going to be left behind. So, sir, all that stuff you talked about, it's in the rearview mirror. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lutzow. In 2001, the senior leadership of the Department of Defense made a decision to merge these structures and to name the organization the Defense Cybercrime Center, or DC3. We will now welcome Mr. Chad Brown, who will describe this key moment in our history. Mr. Brown continues to serve at DC3 today.
Thank you. I'm having a lot of flashbacks with all the familiar faces from 20 plus years ago, and it's amazing. Good afternoon, my name is Chad Brown, and I work in the executive front office of the DoD Cybercrime Center, or as we like to call it, DC3. I arrived to what is now called DC3 the day prior to the tragedies of 9/11. I had just out-processed my previous assignment at the Pentagon on Friday, 7 September 2001. The spring prior, senior leadership at the Pentagon, as well as OSI and NCIS leadership, decided that the two pre-existing directorates, the training program and the forensics lab, needed an overarching front office to manage both of those directorates. Hence, DC3 was officially stood up in October of 2001. And the first executive director, Mr. Philip Reidinger, arrived in November of 2001. During that time frame, DC3 only had around 120 employees, and we only worked out of one facility, the one right next to the tent. Whereas now we have multiple facilities for around 500 personnel. And it was during a strategic planning session in the spring of 2002 that the decision was made to create the third directorate of DC3, the Defense Cybercrime Institute. Let's fast forward to December of 2002. Mr. Reidinger decided to depart DC3, and OSI and NCIS leadership made a decision to have the then training program director, Mr. Preston Thomas, be the acting executive director of DC3 until a decision was made in August of 2003 to appoint then Colonel Stephen Shirley, the then OSI vice commander, to also be the acting executive director of DC3. And then in the spring of 2004, it became Mr. Stephen Shirley, the executive director of DC3. I can still remember when the then Colonel Stephen Shirley would drive up to DC3 in a small pickup truck once a week on Tuesdays to meet with our small contingent of directors and key staff. Back then, we called that Tuesday meeting the weekly directors meeting. Over the years, we renamed that meeting to the enterprise meeting. And believe it or not, Mr. Shirley, that same meeting is still held on Tuesdays. Thank you for joining us on this very special day, and enjoy the rest of the celebration.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. In 2007, Deputy Secretary of Defense Gordon England brought together stakeholders from the U.S. government and several prime defense contractors to develop solutions to ongoing adversarial theft of DoD data from contractor networks. The working group that took on this challenge developed a first-of-its-kind model for the government to exchange cyber threat information with private industry. DC3's first cyber threat report was transmitted to our initial 16 defense industrial-based partners on 1 February 2008. That public-private partnership between DC3 and over 1,000 defense industrial-based companies continues to this day, led by the DoD Defense Industrial-Based Collaborative Information Sharing Environment, or as we call it, DICE, and in collaboration with every other line of effort in DC3, as well as numerous partners in the interagency, many of whom are represented in the audience today. Ms. Gena Brown has played a key role in the development of this effort. Ms. Brown, over to you.
I'm a little short. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Gena Brown, and I work in the directorate with the hardest name to pronounce. Everywhere I go, folks look at me crazy when I say it. They even look at the acronym and they pronounce it wrong. And I understand because I've been here for about 15 years, and I still have to think really hard when I say it myself. So, let's see. I started with the DoD, Defense Industrial Base Collaborative Information Sharing Environment, pronounced DICE, not DCICE. I really hate when people say DCICE. In June of 2008, as a contractor, I became a civilian in April of 2019. When DICE first started, there were about 7 people who were dual-headed, supporting the National Cyber Investigative Task Force, as well as the DICE at the same time. By the end of 2008, the DICE had about 19 staff members and 25 DIB partners. During that time, the team was organized with a technical lead, and we ran 3 cells. We also disseminated our cyber threat information products through Federal Express or regular mail. How archaic. By the end of 2008, DICE had mailed 44 threat products. The very first collaborative meeting we had with our partners was called the Technical Exchange. We held it at DC3 in July of 2008. We had about 15 visitors representing 5 companies. Through an increase in our partnership, incident reporting, increase in collaboration with our partners and the U.S. government agencies represented here today, we also had very exceptional leadership that has put forth efforts into growing DICE and making that change over the last 15 years. Some of our major accomplishments include being the first government entity to achieve a widely known industry process improvement certification named Capability Maturity Model Integration for Services. We currently hold a level 3 certification, which we obtained around 2011. We did this so that we could align with industry and gain the trust of our DIB partners by ensuring we had repeatable processes to deliver quality threat products and services. We have maintained this certification, and we have about 60 process documents that we maintain and update on a regular basis. We have streamlined and improved our organizational posture. We currently have we have 3 divisions. We have 65 people who support the DICE. We have conducted many technical exchanges, and we've had up to 200 participants in each of those. We now share our threat products electronically instead of sending them via mail, which is great. We've increased our analytical threat product line in quality and quantity through that process improvement. We initially started out with doing, we had a product line of maybe 4 different products. We now have 13. As of June of this year, we've actually delivered over 600,000 actionable indicators of compromise, over 14,000 cyber threat products, and our forensics lab has performed over 78,000 hours of malware analysis at no cost to our DIB partnership. In our commitment to protect the DoD and in coordination with our partners' feedback, we have continued to develop cybersecurity as a service offerings since 2019. We have an offering called DICE Cube now, and that provides automated indicator blocking and alerting for our partners. We have a service called adversary emulating testing, which is a form of penetration testing focused on adversarial TTPs. We have a cyber resilience analysis tool that our partners use to help assess their ability to manage cyber risk and maintain critical operational functions during times of stress. I've been with DC3, as I said, 15 years. I've enjoyed working here. I've enjoyed seeing the progress and the growth of DICE and DC3 as a whole, and I look forward to the continued support with you all and to better defend our nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. On November 21st, 2016, U.S. Secretary of Defense Ash Carter authorized the establishment of the Defense Vulnerability Disclosure Program, or DVDP, to utilize private sector cybersecurity researchers to scan public-facing DoD websites for vulnerabilities. DC3 VDP was born from this authorization. A year later, DVDP underwent a name change, becoming DC3 Vulnerability Disclosure Program, as we know it today. In May 2021, DoD expanded the Vulnerability Disclosure Program to include all publicly accessible DoD information systems. Today, VDP interacts with crowdsourced cybersecurity researchers and serves as the focal point for the vulnerability reports to help protect the Department of Defense Information Network. At this time, we welcome to the stage Mr. John Repici to speak about this effort.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Repici. I'm the CTO for the Vulnerability Disclosure Program here at DC3. So we are currently the newest directorate here. So in essence, the wayward child. We do deal with hackers every day, and we are driven by hackers. We currently have crowdsourced over 5,000 hackers, everything from aging hipsters like myself to young kids eating Cheetos in their mom's basement, pounding down Mountain Dew. So it's been a pretty fantastic and interesting time over the last 6+ years. So usually in terms of IT and cybersecurity, we look at like 3 terms, or at least I do, and these are derived from something OWASP used to say, where we look at everything, it's either like people, process, or technologies, and that's where like your problems or like your risks or your opportunities exist. And so like one of the things I would like to speak to is the people who drove VDP to where it's at today, and specifically the directors who I believe are either our current director and past directors, I think, are all here in-house. And if they are here, cool. If not, well, I'm still going to talk about them anyway. In 2016, the first director of VDP, Mr. John Stivers, he was given the task to get us spun up within 30 days. So he took a dream, turned it into reality, and was operational. Although in a very analog state where folks were still using pencils and spreadsheets and things like phone calls, emails to communicate vulnerabilities received and get those over to our friends at JFHQ for remediation. But we were operational. We all sat in kind of a filthy little part of the building, which has now been renovated, so it's fantastic. But back then you worried about sitting down, getting tetanus or something like that. Our accommodations have like really, much better now. We've really stepped it up. Clean place, clean carpets, fantastic. But he also drove us from that analog process to a digital process to streamline everything for all of us, our partners at JFHQ and the folks at the component level, our analysts internally, so that we can process these reports from cradle to grave rapidly. In 2018, Mr. Chris Johnson came on board as the second director of VDP. Fantastic guy. He taught me how to sell the sizzle. I always thought I taught him, but apparently that was not the case. In his time at VDP, one of his big goals was to expand the scope of like what we did. Initially, the only thing we would process would be things like websites, and that was it. He was able to change the policy so we can process if it's something that's accessible and it's a DoD asset, it can be reported to us, and we can get that over to JFHQ for remediation actions. That would include everything from a poorly developed mobile application, which is not uncommon, VPN endpoints, IoT devices, wayward laserjet printers sitting on public IP space from National Guard and Garrison out in California. No offense, Army folks. And all that kind of stuff, even the potential to deal with ICS or OT or industrial control systems, operational technology. And he was able to bring in a whole new class of vulnerabilities that may have never been noticed before, and being able to get those out to JFHQ, and again, to get remediated, and we make sure that stuff gets fixed as well. So in 2021, our third and current director, Ms. Melissa Weiss, she saw an opportunity to really grow another arm off of VDP and create another effort for the Defense Industrial Base, and working in conjunction with our friends at DCSA, created the DIB VDP pilot, where we brought the same capability minus the tetanus to all of the folks, or at least with select folks that wanted to participate in the pilot, about 40 or so small DIB companies. Fantastic pilot, ran for a year, and tremendous results from that. And she also, just one other thing, Melissa Weiss also makes sure that I don't go unhinged and that I stick to the point, so, which is a good thing for me because I like to wander off sometimes into the street. So over the last 6+ years, between all of our efforts, we've collected very close to 50,000 reports. I think we're at 48-ish, almost 49,000 reports. And these are all vulnerabilities that the components, the DoD and the JFHQ DoD and the small DIBCOs had no idea existed before in the past, and really brought like recognition to what a VDP is to folks at large, and the benefits of actually being involved in one. And with that, I have nothing else. It's a lovely day outside, is it not? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Repici. During the first 2 decades of DC3's history, it was administratively a part of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. As the scope of DC3's mission evolved and as it grew in size, it became appropriate to consider how the center should be aligned. Following extensive discussions with OSI and many stakeholders, on January 15, 2021, the Secretary of the Air Force officially designated DC3 as an independent field operating agency. In parallel, OSI and DC3 formalized a special partnership. Both DC3 and OSI are administratively assigned to the Department of the Air Force Inspector General. At this time, we welcome to the stage John McCann to provide context on this moment in DC3's history.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am John McCann, and I was the lead action officer for the years-long coordination and discussions involved with the elevation of DC3 from an operating location of Headquarters Air Force Office of Special Investigations to an independent field operating agency You are all aware of the adage, timing is everything. Well, this was particularly applicable for the DC3 Field Operating Agency request. The discussions to activate DC3 as a field operating agency initially started in 2016 under the leadership of Mr. Steve Shirley. Recognizing the evolution of DC3 mission areas across the Department of Defense and the growth of personnel from its initial cadre to over 500 members, Mr. Shirley presented the vision to realign DC3 to a higher level organization. There were numerous discussions on what type of organization DC3 should be. Do we realign to a Department of Defense agency, given our broad mission? Should we become an Air Force element or an Air Force center? After senior leader discussions led by Mr. Shirley in 2017, he determined to submit an organizational change request for a field operating agency to Headquarters Air Force. However, after an extensive coordination process, concerns within the Air Force about the Secretary of the Air Force certification to Congress resulted in the request being tabled. In 2018, Mr. Shirley retired, and Mr. Jeff Speck assumed the executive director position at DC3. Along with the change in leadership at DC3, there were several other leadership transitions across the Air Force, to include the OSI commander to Brigadier General Bullard, and the Inspector General to Lieutenant General Saeed. And DC3 had a new attorney that took a special interest in the elevation of DC3 to a field operating agency. That attorney is Mr. Richard Giroux. Mr. Speck reinvigorated the field operating agency discussion. However, the concerns within Headquarters Air Force on the congressional certification still existed, and we knew we'd have an uphill battle if we resubmitted a request. After exhaustive research and legal consultations by Mr. Giroux, an exception to the congressional reporting was found in the 2019 Defense Appropriations Act for organizations that have special funding sources. DC3 qualified for this exception to policy. Armed with this information, Mr. Speck then picked up the torch in 2019 and led the development of a new organizational change request package and initiated the extensive discussions with Air Force leaders referenced earlier. The 2019 request did not prove to be a simple effort, as many of you can relate concerning headquarters staffing. After a grueling multi-year staffing process, writing and then rewriting the paperwork required for the change, and the advocacy of Mr. Speck and other leaders, we were fortunate to receive approval from the Secretary of the Air Force under the Inspector General effective 15 January 2021, while maintaining and formalizing the special relationship with OSI on administrative, law enforcement, and counterintelligence matters. The partnership between DC3 and OSI continues to grow through operational coordination, organizational development, and partner engagements thanks to the vision of Mr. Shirley, the leadership of Mr. Speck, and now the leadership of Mr. Sunderbruch. Thank you and enjoy the rest of today's festivities.
Thank you, Mr. McCann. So we thank you all for sharing your experiences. We welcome now Mr. Sunderbruch to offer additional remarks about DC3's futures to conclude today's ceremony.
So thank you very much for everybody for those that explanation of our history, where we came from, and now I'd like to talk briefly about where we're going. Before I do, I'd like to pass on particular appreciation for our DC3 alumni and for those who have served here for many years. Whether you were here for just a couple of years at the start of the DC3 story, or whether you've been here through the entire period of our history, you were the people who built it. And I think the vignettes that we just heard, the leadership of Mr. Shirley and Mr. Specht and the many, many other people who've served here, including Mr. Black, who's currently our deputy director, they were the people that built DC3. And after the ceremony today, I encourage you to talk to them. It's our workforce today that built the DC3 that we've heard about. As we look to the future, I'd like to briefly talk about our strategic plan. So the first thing we'd like to do is we'd like to continue to strengthen our deliberate partnerships. For everyone who came today, our national leaders, our international partners, our military colleagues from the investigative agencies, U.S. Cyber Command, and other entities, we thank you. We treasure our partnerships with you, and it's on that foundation that we will build our future. We're going to continue to try to develop innovative capabilities and services. So there are a lot of incredible things that DC3 has done. I can tell you there are a lot of really cool ideas coming, and we're going to try to make sure that we build them in a non-duplicative and partnering kind of way. We're going to continue to try to make sure that as we integrate this information, we share our understandings. So that's going to be with our international partners, it's going to be with our industry partners, and it's going to be with people in the military and across the national security structures of the United States. Because our hope is together we will be able to continue to play a role in reducing cyber risk. And finally, DC3 is going to be working hard to make sure that we embrace the values of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. We want our DC3 of the future to continue to be ever more representative of the country that we have the privilege of serving. Before I move on and we turn it back over and we move on to the festivities afterwards, I just want to extend my sincerest gratitude to the hardworking members of the DC3 team who made today's event possible. It was a big lift to get everything set up. We have a lot of people who generally talk to hackers or work with industry partners or work in the lab, all of whom took the charge and worked together as event staff for today. So let's offer them a round of applause. So after the ceremony today, we're going to have a reception opportunity. We have literally cornhole games. We have food trucks. There are a number of local businesses. We have picnic tables. We have the opportunity. We have the tent for several more hours. So many of you have not seen each other for a while, and there's the opportunity to get something to eat, to hang out together, and just have the opportunity to share and talk, and potentially to make new friends. So, Master Sergeant George, thank you very much, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. And that concludes today's ceremony.
Thank you all for celebrating with us here today. And as Mr. Sunderbruch said, there is food and refreshments in the back and cornhole. So enjoy.